Having Lori.
All right, so regular sex offense, that's the bestiality, necrophilia, drug somebody to have sex with them.
No. I am going to be on drugs and rape him.
Oh, no, but you have to give him drugs too.
Yeah, I guess it could be either. Never mind.
Wait, what are we talking about?
Categories of sex offenders.
In this corrections
There's
law.
violent, and then there's like just the regular.
And
Law enforcement agency having jurisdiction means chief law enforcement officer in the village, town, or city in which the offender expects to reside upon his or her discharge, probation, parole, release to post-release supervision, or upon any form of state or local conditional release. Or the chief law enforcement officer of the county in which the offender expects to reside. Or, if there be no chief enforcement officer in such village, town, city, or county, the division of state police, and in the case of a sex offender who is or expects to be employed by, enrolled in, attending, or employed, whether for compensation or not, at an institution of higher education.
The division means the Division of Criminal Justice Services, also DCJS.
Sexual predator means a sex offender who has been convicted of a sexually violent offense and who suffers from a mental abnormality or personality disorder that makes her likely to engage in predatory sexually violent offenses. Sexually violent offender means a sex offender who's been convicted of a sexually violent offense.
Predicate sex offender means a sex offender who has been convicted of an offense set forth in subdivision 2 or 3 of this section when the offender has been previously convicted of an offense set forth in subdivision 2 or 3 of this section.
Mental abnormality means a congenital or acquired condition of a person that affects the emotional or volitional capacity of the person in a manner that predisposes that person to the commission of criminal sexual acts to a degree that makes the person a menace to the health and safety of other persons.
Predatory means an act directed at a stranger. So I see a hot guy and just rape him. Or a person with whom a relationship has been established or promoted for the primary purpose of victimization.
Go.
Probation means a sentence of probation imposed pursuant to Article 65 of the Penal Law and shall include a sentence of imprisonment imposed in conjunction with a sentence of probation.
Non-resident worker means any person required to register as a sex offender in another jurisdiction who is employed or carries on a vocation in the state on either a full-time or part-time basis with or without getting paid for more than 14 consecutive days or more than 30 days in a calendar year. 14 consecutive days or more than 30 days in a calendar year.
And that's what?
That is a non-resident worker.
Non-resident student means a person required to register as a sex offender in another jurisdiction who is enrolled on a full-time or part-time basis in any public or private educational institution in this state, including any secondary school, trade, or professional institution or institution of higher education.
Authorized internet entity means it's a business of some kind.
Providing or offering a service over the internet which permits persons under 18 years of age to access, meet, congregate, or communicate with other users for the purpose of social networking. This definition shall not include general email services.
Provider means any business, organization, or other entity engaged in the business of providing a computer and communications facility through which a customer may obtain access to the internet, but does not include a business, organization, or other entity to the extent that it provides only telecommunication services.
Internet identifiers means electronic mail addresses and designations used for the purposes of chat, instant messaging, social networking, or other similar internet communication.
Okay, so 160B, subsection B, a photograph and set of fingerprints. For a sex offender given a level 3 designation, the division shall, during the period of registration, update such photograph once each year. For a sex offender given a level 1 or 2 designation, the division shall, during the period of registration, update such photograph once every 3 years. The division shall notify the sex offender by mail of the duty to appear and be photographed at the specified law enforcement agency having jurisdiction. Such notification shall be mailed at least 30 days and not more than 60 days before the photograph is required to be taken.
Wait.
The division shall charge a fee of $10 anytime the sex offender changes his address.
If the sex offender has been given a level 3 designation, he or she shall personally appear at the law enforcement agency within 20 days of the first anniversary of the sex offender's initial registration and every year thereafter, providing a current photograph of such offender. The law enforcement agency having jurisdiction shall photograph the sex offender and shall promptly forward a copy to the division. The local law enforcement agency having jurisdiction shall be the warden, superintendent, sheriff, or other person in charge of the state or local correctional facility. That's it.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. If the sex offender has been given a level 1 or level 2 designation, he or she shall personally appear to the law enforcement agency within 20 days on the third anniversary of the sex offender's initial registration and every 3 years after, providing the registration for the purpose of providing a current photograph. The same rules apply as above. So the first anniversary, if you're a level 3 designation, 20 days before the first anniversary. Level 1 or level 2 designation on the third anniversary, 20 days before the third anniversary, and every 3 years after for the photograph.
Wait,
So the standard of proof at all these hearings for sex offenders is clear and convincing. Okay, clear and convincing evidence. That includes the defense herself proving things by clear and convincing. The court shall notify the DA and sex offender of the date of determination proceeding to be held, which shall be at least 45 days after such notice is given, notifying them that this proceeding is being held to determine whether you will be classified as a level 3, level 2, or level 1, whether you will be designated as a sexual predator, a violent sexual offender, or a predicate sex offender.
what statute?
Okay, so the standard of proof at all these hearings for sex offenders is clear and convincing. The court shall notify the DA and sex offender of the date of determination proceeding to be held, which shall be at least 45 days after such notice is given, notifying them that this proceeding is being held to determine whether you will be classified as a level 3, level 2, or level 1, whether you will be designated as a sexual predator, a violent sexual offender, or a predicate sex offender.
What statute? The 41 wedding anniversary.
Okay, for sex offenders released on probation or discharged upon payment of a fine, CD, or an unconditional discharge, which would never happen. But anyway, at least 15 days prior to determination proceeding, the DA shall provide to the court and the sex offender a written statement setting forth the determinations sought by the DA and the reasons for seeking such determinations. The court shall allow the sex offender to appear and be heard. The state shall appear by the DA, who has to prove shit by clear and convincing evidence.
If the sex offender to whom a notice has been mailed at the last reported address pursuant to paragraph B of subdivision 1 of section 168B of this article fails to personally appear at the law enforcement agency having jurisdiction within 20 days of the anniversary of the sex offender's initial registration or an alternate later date scheduled by the law enforcement agency having jurisdiction, he or she shall be in violation of this section. The duty to personally appear for such updated photograph shall be temporarily suspended during any period in which the sex offender is confined in any hospital or institution, and such sex offender shall personally appear for such updated photograph no later than 90 days after release from such hospital or institution, or an alternate later date scheduled by the law enforcement agency having jurisdiction.
Any sex offender having been designated a level 3 risk or a sexual predator shall also personally verify his or her address every 90 calendar days with a local law enforcement agency having jurisdiction where the offender resides.
Upon receipt of a change in the status of enrollment, attendance, employment, or residence, but in any event, no more than 2 business days after such receipt, the division shall notify each law enforcement agency having jurisdiction which is affected by such change. So if I move, I got to tell the place that I moved that I'm a sex offender. And then they have to tell the other law enforcement agency. The division has to tell the other law enforcement agency within 2 business days.
Rated forfeitures or may relieve the eligible offender of all forfeitures, disabilities, or bars, provided, however, that no such certificate shall apply or be construed as to apply to the right of such person to retain or to be eligible for public office. I'll record you, right?
Okay. This is 703 sub 5. In granting or revoking a certificate of relief from civil disabilities, smile, you're in my shot. The action of the department shall be deemed a judicial function and shall not be reviewable if done according to law. So even though a judge is not doing it, it's deemed a judicial function.
703. In order for an offender to receive a certificate of good conduct, among other requirements, he must have conducted himself in a manner warranting such relief for a minimum period in accordance with Section 703B(3). Those periods are: for a misdemeanor, 1 year; for a Class D, C, D, or E felony, 3 years; for a Class A or B felony, 5 years. So A or B felony, 5 years; D, C, E felony, 3 years; misdemeanor, 1 year, and that's for certificate of good conduct. Do it? Wait, the next,
I want to just make a
the
statement.
next one you read.
Hold on. Certificate of good conduct with multiple felonies. The certificate of good conduct you can get with multiple felonies. The certificate of relief you can't.
Corrections Law 700, sub 2, true or false? 2 or more convictions, conviction of felonies charged in separate counts of one indictment shall be deemed to be one conviction for purposes of Article 23 of the Correction Law. True.
Oh, really?
Do you do DoorDash?
Are you on Uber Eats?
Are you on Uber Eats?
Oh, no, we're not.
All
right.
right. Well,
Loyalty reward?
I'm crying.
sign up for loyalty rewards.
It's number 4. 4 is the lucky one.